Ethan hadn't exactly chosen the pharmaceutical industry. It had been handed to him, like an heirloom he never asked for. His father, a brilliant but obsessive chemist, had built the family business from little more than sheer willpower in a cluttered garage decades ago. Over the years, the old man had carved out a small but meaningful space in the market, producing rare, vital medications that never brought in blockbuster profits, but kept the company afloat. After their father passed, Ethan and his siblings took over the business, more out of a sense of duty than ambition. Bound by family loyalty and the unspoken expectation to carry on the legacy, Ethan juggled the ever-demanding business with the chaos of raising a family. He poured himself into the work, year after year, determined to keep things running. But over time, that burden began to crush him. With his twin daughters off at college and his marriage growing increasingly stale, more like a routine than a relationship, Ethan knew it was time to move on. Selling the company to a pharmaceutical giant wasn't just smart business. It felt like a way out, a lifeline. He could finally breathe. But tonight, sitting alone in a crowded terminal at JFK, he was anything but relaxed. He watched swarms of travelers rushing to make their flights, hoping one of those departures would carry him back home to Charlotte. The past few days had been a blur, days packed with meetings, final negotiations, and paperwork, all alongside his sisters as they signed away their father's life's work. The company had once stood as a testament to their father's genius, but now it was barely treading water. Selling it had stirred up mixed emotions, part sentimentality, part relief. Earlier that day, Ethan and his team had finalized the deal, leaving the remaining red tape to the lawyers. He was desperate to catch the last flight out, but things weren't looking good, fully booked, and he was number 3 on the standby list. He hadn't bothered calling Vanessa. What was he even supposed to say? She wouldn't be thrilled either way. At the airport bar, Ethan nursed his second gin and tonic, eyes locked on the boarding gate, mind replaying every step of the deal. The sale would net him over $10 million, not to mention a cushy transitional role with the buying corporation. It was a fresh start, a chance to finally upgrade his life, and maybe Vanessa's, though she rarely showed appreciation for anything these days. Their daughters, both juniors at Duke, were still draining his finances with tuition, but that stress would vanish once the money cleared. The boarding process was almost finished when something unexpected happened. The waitlist display updated, and there it was, his name. Ethan tossed some cash on the bar, got a knowing nod from the bartender, grabbed his bags, and bolted toward the gate. The airline agent smiled as she handed him a boarding pass, explaining that a no-show group of 4 had freed up seats. Ethan and 2 other lucky passengers hustled down the jetway, and to his surprise, he was placed in first class. A sign, maybe a little reward from the universe. He had made the flight. He was heading home. Maybe this deal really was the beginning of something new. As the cabin door shut behind him, the flight attendant leaned in with a polite smile. "Would you like a drink while we taxi?" "I'll take another gin and tonic," Ethan replied, not hesitating. He downed it quickly, letting the burn settle his nerves, and leaned back into the plush seat. He drifted off, daydreaming about a future where he and Vanessa flew first class without blinking. The landing jolted him awake. Groggy, slightly buzzed, and utterly drained, Ethan made his way to the taxi stand. It was too late to call Vanessa, and honestly, he didn't want to deal with her mood. The cab ride home was long enough for him to nod off again, only waking when the driver nudged him gently upon arrival. He paid the fare, tipped generously out of habit, and climbed out of the car, his body aching from the long day. As he walked up the driveway, already craving the comfort of slipping under the covers next to Vanessa, something gave him pause. A sleek gold Mercedes sat parked squarely in front of his side of the garage. It was newer, expensive-looking, a little too showy. Ethan didn't recognize it, but all Mercedes had that polished look to them. Still, it felt out of place. The house was dark. It was well past midnight. Ethan just stood there, staring at the unfamiliar car, frozen in place. He had spoken to Vanessa earlier that day, just around lunchtime, and she hadn't mentioned anyone coming over, especially not this late. His gut twisted. Trying to shake the creeping suspicion, Ethan told himself there had to be a reasonable explanation, maybe a neighbor, maybe one of the girl's friends. He clung to any excuse that would let him walk inside and slide into bed beside his wife like nothing was wrong. But something was wrong. He could feel it. Slowly, he unlocked the door between the garage and the kitchen and stepped into the quiet house. Moving like a ghost, Ethan crept through the kitchen and up the stairs toward the bedroom. The door was wide open, odd, considering Vanessa was a light sleeper and hated noise. And then he saw it. He stood frozen, unable to breathe, as his mind tried and failed to make sense of the scene. Vanessa lay sprawled on her side of the bed, completely unclothed, curled around a sleeping man whose face carried the smug satisfaction of someone too comfortable. Her arm was draped across his chest like they'd done this before. Many times, probably. Ethan just stood there, time grinding to a halt. Everything in him clenched. Eventually, his mind kicked back into gear, and the details started pouring in. The way Vanessa's hand rested possessively on the man's chest. The soft, rhythmic snoring that used to lull Ethan to sleep now felt like a cruel taunt. That sound, once intimate and reassuring, was now a dagger in his chest, reminding him of everything that had slipped through his fingers. Even through the pain, Ethan's mind began cataloging the evidence like a machine. The stranger's clothes were folded neatly on his chair, the one he'd sat in for years while talking to Vanessa about life, kids, bills, dreams. That image sent a hot, sharp surge of rage through him. He straightened his slacks, pulled his keys and wallet from his pocket, and paused, his mind racing. For a second, he thought about grabbing the tennis racket from the closet and showing this intruder exactly what betrayal cost. Another part of him burned with the urge to unleash all that fury on Vanessa, the woman who'd clearly stopped pretending to care. Ethan knew better than to let his emotions steer him into something reckless. Sure, smashing Derek's face in with a tennis racket might feel gratifying for about 5 seconds, but it could lead to consequences he didn't have the energy or patience to deal with later. So instead, a more calculated idea began to take shape. He pulled out his phone and calmly took several photos, clear, damning shots that left no room for denial. After snapping the final image, Ethan turned his attention to Derek's neatly folded clothes and shoes. The guy was built like a linebacker, easily 4 or 5 inches taller, and at least 50 pounds heavier than Ethan, who stood at 5 feet 10 inches and barely tipped the scale at 160. The racket, Ethan realized, wouldn't have helped him much anyway. Holding Derek's things in his hands, Ethan let his gaze settle on Vanessa one final time. 20 years together, raising 2 daughters, building a life, he took it all in. Then he mentally shut the door on it. Whatever love he had once clung to had just been extinguished. He walked out of the bedroom dry-eyed, headed downstairs, and slipped out into the night. The Mercedes key fob responded with a chirp as he unlocked the luxury car parked in his driveway, on his side, no less. He dropped his bags in the trunk, slid behind the wheel, and fired up the engine. Flashy cars had never been his thing, but as he pulled onto the road and felt the engine hum through the curves, he couldn't deny, it drove like a dream. About a mile down the road, Ethan pulled over and rifled through Derek's wallet. It had the basics, cash, credit cards, a few business cards that identified Derek Malone as a senior sales manager at a local Mercedes dealership, and a license listing a Charlotte address. If this guy had a family nearby, Ethan realized, he could do some serious damage, blow up more than just his own marriage. But Ethan was too worn out to think through the implications. He needed rest, badly. So he drove to the nearest motel, checked in under a fake name, and collapsed onto the bed. Back at the house, Vanessa Caldwell was waking up in the same bed she'd defiled the night before, oblivious to the chaos she'd just set in motion. She prided herself on being cautious. Not exactly clever like Ethan, but detail-oriented enough to keep her affair hidden for nearly 5 months without raising suspicion. She had played her part well until now. As she lay next to Derek that morning, she silently assessed him. He was decent in bed, though if she were honest, Ethan had always been better. But outside the bedroom? There was no comparison. Derek lacked subtlety. He was starting to get too clingy. He had begged her to let him spend the night, and against her better judgment, she had agreed. But she knew this was the last time. Letting a man who wasn't her husband sleep in their bed felt a little too brazen, even for her. Ethan would never find out, she had told herself. Still, it had crossed a line. She resolved to call Derek later that day and end it. Clean break. After showering, Vanessa returned to the bedroom to get dressed. That's when Derek stepped out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around his waist, a puzzled look on his face. "Vanessa, where are my clothes?" he asked. "What?" She responded blankly. "They were folded right here," he said, pointing to the chair. "Now they're gone. Did you move them?" "No," she said, annoyed. "I didn't touch anything." "Maybe you took them to the guest room," he offered, heading into the hallway. "They're not there," she called after him, her irritation rising. Derek returned quickly, brows furrowed. "Nothing there either." "Did you leave them downstairs last night?" she asked, arms crossed. "No, I know I didn't," Derek replied, his voice tightening. "But I'll check anyway." Moments later, he was back, this time in full-blown panic. "Vanessa," he shouted. "My car's gone. My clothes aren't anywhere downstairs. Someone was here. Someone took my stuff and my car." "Jesus," he muttered, pacing. "What the hell is happening?" Vanessa blinked, trying to process. "What do you mean, gone?" she asked, her voice rising. "How can your car and clothes just vanish?" "I don't know," Derek snapped. "We were both here the whole night. No one came in, or did they?" Then Vanessa suddenly dropped down onto the bed, her face pale. Her voice came out in a whisper, barely audible. "Derek, what if it was Ethan?" His jaw dropped. "What? What if he came home from New York while we were sleeping?" she said, eyes wide. "What if he saw us? What if he took your clothes and drove off in your car?" "Oh no," Derek said, collapsing beside her. "That's bad. Real bad. We need to find out where he is," Vanessa said quickly, heart pounding. "If he's still in New York, then maybe it was a break-in. But if not..." Derek groaned. "We can't call the cops. That damn car is registered in my wife's name. Tax loopholes or some nonsense. She handles all that crap." His voice trailed off, imagining just how deep this mess could go. "I'll call his office," he added. "That secretary of his, what's her name? Dana? She usually gets in early. She might know something." Vanessa, already panicking, grabbed her phone and dialed the office. It wasn't even 8 a.m. yet. Ethan Caldwell's office came Dana's crisp voice. "Hi, Dana. It's Vanessa," she said quickly, trying to sound normal. "Sorry to call so early, but Ethan didn't check in last night. I was wondering if you've heard from him." Dana hesitated, then replied carefully. "It's still pretty early, Vanessa. The team in New York worked late last night. Ethan called me around 6, said things were going well, and they might finalize today." "That's great," Vanessa said, forcing a smile into her voice. "So, he's still in New York, then?" "Yes, definitely," Dana replied. "I expect to hear from him once they're back with the lawyers. Would you like me to have him call you?" "Yes, that would be wonderful," Vanessa said, trying not to sound as nervous as she felt. "But only if he has time. I know how important this deal is." "Of course," Dana said warmly. "Take care." Vanessa ended the call and turned to Derek. "He's still in New York," she said, her voice unsteady. "So maybe we should report a break-in. Say someone stole your car. And your clothes." Derek stared at her in disbelief. "And what exactly are we supposed to tell the cops?" he asked, sarcasm creeping into his voice. "That your boyfriend's wardrobe got jacked from your marital bedroom, along with his car? That's our story. Seriously, what the hell are we going to do now?" Derek asked, rubbing his forehead. "We're completely screwed." Vanessa raised a hand, trying to steady both of them. "Okay, I get it. Take a breath. Let's not panic. We just need to think this through." Her voice wavered, but she forced herself to sound composed. "Here's an idea. I'll drive you home. You can change into something there, then report the theft as if it happened while you were at home. Maybe your wife was out dropping the kids off at school or something. As for the missing clothes, let's not mention those. That part's a little harder to explain." Derek hesitated, rubbing his jaw. "The thing is, I told my wife yesterday that I was driving down to Atlanta for a meeting about the new S-Class release. Said I wouldn't be back till around noon." Vanessa's eyes lit up slightly. "Perfect. That gives us a window. Around noon, you arrive home, realize the car's gone. Say you parked for a quick errand before heading to the dealership, left your keys in the ignition like an idiot, and someone took off with it." Derek slowly started to nod. "Actually, yeah, that could work. And I could claim I left my wallet in the car too, just to make it more believable." Vanessa gave him a slight smile, pleased with her own improvisation. "Exactly. And until then, we can just hang out here, maybe take another shower, together." Derek perked up at the suggestion and stood from the bed. "Sounds good. I'll call in sick." Vanessa, now back in planning mode, stepped into the hallway to make her own call. Her job as a paralegal wasn't exciting, but it gave her enough flexibility to bend the rules when needed. When she returned, Derek was already back in bed, waiting for her. She stood still in the doorway. Tempting as it was to crawl back under the sheets, Vanessa was thinking ahead, thinking about Ethan, about what could have happened if he'd actually come home. The fantasy she'd entertained about getting away with this was starting to unravel. "I think we need to stop," she said finally, not moving an inch toward him. "It's over, Derek. We had our fun, but last night was a close call. It could have been Ethan. We're lucky it was just a burglar. This was always temporary." Derek blinked. He opened his mouth to argue, to persuade her, but in the end, He couldn't deny she was right. They'd pushed their luck too far already. And besides, there were always other women. Yeah, he said, trying to sound more disappointed than he really felt. It was a good run. Glad we agree, Vanessa replied coolly. Now, let's find you something to wear. That task turned out to be more complicated than either of them expected. Derek was significantly larger than Ethan, taller by a few inches and heavier by a solid 50 pounds. It took a while, but Vanessa eventually dug out an old pair of sweatpants, faded and fraying at the edges. She made some quick alterations, cutting the waistband, tying it off with string, and found a sweatshirt that had accidentally turned pink in the wash years ago. She trimmed the sleeves to make it fit better and handed it over. Derek looked down at himself and scowled. Vanessa, almost amused by how ridiculous he looked, held back a laugh and gave him a faint, unsympathetic smile instead. They decided to kill time with the TV until it was late enough to stage Derek's return home. Meanwhile, earlier that same morning, while Derek was pacing half-naked and Vanessa was fabricating alibis, Ethan was pulling into the driveway of the address listed on Derek Malone's license. It was a nice house, suburban and neat, with a child's bike leaning against the garage wall. Ethan sat in the Mercedes for a moment, letting the silence settle around him. He hadn't shed a single tear, not last night, not this morning. Even his usual pre-dawn run hadn't shaken loose the numbness. He climbed out of the car, wallet and ID in hand, and walked to the front door. A few seconds after he rang the bell, a young woman, probably in her late 20s, opened it. She was attractive, though clearly flustered, her expression guarded. Ethan calmly held up Derek's license and gestured toward the car in her driveway. Before he could say anything, the woman slammed the door in his face. Moments later, it creaked open again. This time she was holding a phone, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. "I'm ready to hit send," she said, voice tight. "So you better tell me my husband's okay." Ethan didn't flinch. "Ma'am, I have a photo on my phone of your husband in bed with my wife. Both of them. Naked. Sleeping. So yeah, I think they're doing just fine. But if you want to call the police, be my guest. I'll wait in the car." They locked eyes, silent. Something shifted in her face, shock giving way to something else. Resignation, maybe. She opened the door wider. "Come in." Just then, a child's voice echoed from somewhere deeper in the house. She turned her head. "Wait here," she said quickly and disappeared. Ethan heard her speaking quietly, trying to keep the kid calm. A few minutes later, she reappeared, holding out a cup of coffee. "Hope you take it black," she said flatly. "I have to drop the kids off at school. But honestly, I trust you more than I trust him right now." Ethan nodded, took the cup, and followed her gesture to the couch. "You can stay here until I get back," she added. "Then we'll talk." He sat in silence, sipping the coffee. It wasn't great, but it was warm. He thought about calling his office, maybe checking in, but in the end, he just waited. About 30 minutes later, she returned. Her hair was neatly brushed now, lips lightly tinted with gloss. There was a calmness to her as she walked over and extended her hand. "Sorry about the earlier drama," she said. "I'm Rachel Malone, married to Derek Malone, who, apparently, is screwing your wife." Ethan couldn't help himself. He let out a quiet laugh. Her bluntness cracked through the tension. "You nailed it," he said. "I'm Ethan Caldwell. Vanessa's my wife." They sat, and Ethan filled her in. Everything from walking in on them to the impromptu road trip in Derek's car. As he spoke, he noticed her eyes glisten, blinking back the betrayal that mirrored his own. "I'm divorcing her," Ethan said finally, his voice calm, steady. "This isn't salvageable." "I'm pretty sure these photos will help me get a fair deal when we split everything," Ethan said, holding up his phone. "If you think they'd help you too, I can send them to your phone." Rachel's expression darkened slightly as she considered it. "Yeah, I probably should have them," she said, her voice even and flat. Then after a pause, she added, "But don't send them to me. If I see those images, they'll be burned into my brain. I won't be able to unsee it." "Fair enough," Ethan replied, pocketing the phone. "I'll keep them. If you ever need them, just call. I'm happy to help. But I won't be at my current job much longer," he added, tone steady. "And I sure as hell won't be living in that house anymore. I'll give you my attorney's contact info. If you need anything, photos, legal help, just reach out to him." "Thank you," Rachel said softly. "Seriously. So what do we do now? You planning on returning the car? Or are you going to wait until Derek shows up and try to confront him?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. You've seen him. He's a big guy. Still solid, even if he's put on some extra pounds. Ethan took a moment to think. According to what you said earlier, he told you he'd be in Atlanta overnight. That means he'll probably come rolling in around lunchtime. Rachel smirked. You know, I've never actually driven a Mercedes before. Kind of a sweet ride. I think I'll keep it for now, at least until someone shows up to pry the keys out of my hands. Ethan grinned at her. Well, your husband, excuse me, that asshole, would probably be the first in line to try. That earned a genuine laugh from Rachel, and Ethan joined in. They both needed that moment of levity. Technically, Rachel said, still chuckling, the car's in my name anyway. Tax write-offs, depreciation, whatever. Derek claimed it made more sense since I drive more than he does. She paused thoughtfully. Actually, since I own it, I can give you written permission to drive it. If you get pulled over, I'll back you up. Just have the cops call me. Ethan raised his brows. That's surprisingly brilliant. Don't sound so shocked, she shot back, though a playful smile tugged at her lips. And another thing, you've got Derek's keys and his clothes. If the spare key we keep hidden out back is gone when he gets here, there's a good chance he'll try breaking in. She crossed her arms. And if the security system's on instant alert mode like it should be, he's going to make a scene, and maybe even catch the attention of the cops. Ethan's face lit up with admiration. Rachel, I swear, I think I'm falling in love again. She laughed. All right, don't get ahead of yourself, she teased. Let's see if we can get through today without more arrests. Derek can wait until I get back from school pickup with the kids. Maybe we'll swing by the park. That should give him plenty of time to do something stupid. Whatever goes down, let me know, she added. Especially if he ends up in cuffs. And when you're ready to return the car, just call. I don't want you getting into trouble either. She stood, her tone shifting. We're done here. You've got places to be, and so do I. Ethan slid behind the wheel of the gold Mercedes and eased it out of the driveway, wondering how much the same model in a less obnoxious color might set him back. Rachel handed him a temporary permit with her signature on it, and he left her to handle the rest. Meanwhile, right around noon, Vanessa pulled up in front of Derek's house. She barely came to a complete stop before he climbed out. She didn't say goodbye, just hit the gas and disappeared down the road, eager to leave the whole mess behind her. Derek hesitated at the front door, silently praying it was unlocked. It wasn't. Of course not. Nervously, he made his way to the backyard, heading straight for the fake rock where they usually kept the spare key. Gone. The rock had vanished. Damn it, he muttered. He stared at the back of the house, debating his next move. He tried the sliding glass door. Locked. Same with the kitchen door. Running out of options and patience, Derek looked around the backyard for the easiest point of entry. His eyes landed on the wide family room window. If he had to break something, might as well go big. More room to squeeze through. He grabbed a thick branch from the tree line and gave it a few test swings. Then, with a grunt, he hurled it through the window. The glass exploded with a loud, satisfying crash. That satisfaction was short-lived, because the alarm instantly shrieked to life. To make matters worse, a police cruiser happened to be cruising down the block at that exact moment. Rachel had called earlier that morning to report a string of local break-ins, just in case. And now, her tip was paying off. Shit, 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 Derek hissed as he dragged two patio chairs over to the broken window, hoping to crawl in without stepping on shards of glass. He scrambled clumsily, halfway inside, when a voice boomed behind him. Police. Step away from the window. Hands where we can see them. Derek froze, blood running cold. He turned slowly to see two uniformed officers with weapons drawn. His heart pounded. I can explain, he stammered, climbing down and raising his hands. One of the officers approached, grabbed his wrists, and twisted them behind his back before slapping on a pair of handcuffs. Derek started to babble as the officer read him his rights, but it didn't make a difference. When the officer finished, he asked, Do you want to say anything? Yes. Yes, I do, Derek said quickly, practically sweating. This is my house. I don't have my key. I was just trying to get inside to grab some clothes and call work. The officers exchanged a glance, their eyes flicking to Derek's absurd, makeshift outfit, the pink, shrunken sweatshirt, and the cut-up sweatpants hanging on by string. One of them raised an eyebrow. Do you have any ID on you? The officer asked. Derek's face flushed. No, I lost everything. My car, my wallet, all of it. I just need to get inside. How'd you lose your car? The other officer asked. I stayed at a friend's house last night, Derek said, fumbling over his words. And this morning the car was just gone. Like, vanished. The officer tilted his head. Did you file a report? Not yet, Derek admitted. I mean, I was gonna. The cuffs spit into his wrists. He was sweating now, squirming for a way out. Call my wife, he blurted. She can confirm everything. Maybe you could even take me to my office. I can get help there. Get some proper clothes. One officer scribbled down the number Derek gave him, then stepped away to make the call. Derek listened nervously as the conversation began. Ma'am, this is Officer Riles with the Charlotte Police Department. We're at the residence now, the officer said into the phone, giving the address. We've got a man here claiming he's your husband. Says he tried to break into the house because he lost his clothes and He paused, listening. Yes, ma'am. Understood. No, ma'am. Yes, we'll take care of that. Thank you. The officer turned back to Derek, who stood there like a man watching his life unravel. She says her husband is in Atlanta, the officer informed him, deadpan. And if someone tried to break into her house, it must have been a burglar. Then, a bit colder, she hopes we lock you up and throw away the key. Wait, but Derek's voice cracked as he tried to protest, almost choking on the words. But the officers had already guided him toward the patrol car, ignoring his pleas. He climbed in, barely holding back tears as the door slammed shut behind him. While Derek was getting hauled off in the back of a police car, Vanessa was arriving late to her office. Despite being behind on work, her mind kept drifting back to Ethan. The silence from him was getting unnerving. She picked up her phone and dialed his cell. No answer. Next, she called his office. Dana? Hi, it's Vanessa, she said when someone picked up. Hey, Vanessa. It's Dana, came the reply. I'm starting to get a little worried, Vanessa admitted, trying to keep her voice calm. Ethan still hasn't called. Not since before the deal. No updates here either, Dana said. I assume he's still in New York finalizing things with the lawyers. But you're right, it's unlike him to go radio silent like this. Vanessa's concern deepened. You know what? I'll call the law office myself and check in. Either he or I will follow up in a few minutes. Sounds good, Dana replied. You're the best secretary ever, Vanessa added, managing a sincere tone before ending the call. 10 minutes later, Vanessa's phone rang. Vanessa, it's Dana, came the voice again. I reached someone at the law firm. They said Ethan left last night, trying to catch a late flight back to Charlotte. Wait, so he's not in New York anymore? Vanessa asked, a spark of hope in her voice. No, he's not, Dana confirmed. I actually spoke with him briefly. He asked me to tell you he'd call later. Oh, okay. Thank you, Dana, Vanessa said, breathing a little easier, though her anxiety didn't disappear entirely. You're welcome, Dana replied, then hung up. Vanessa sat with the phone in her hand, a growing knot twisting deep in her stomach. Something didn't feel right. Ethan, meanwhile, was behind the wheel of the gold Mercedes, heading toward the office of a divorce lawyer recommended by Greg Hartman, his longtime business attorney and someone Ethan deeply trusted. Greg had assured him this woman knew her stuff. Ethan was hoping that trust extended to her, too. Mr. Caldwell, please have a seat. Miss Wexler will be with you shortly, the receptionist said when he arrived. The waiting room was modest but professional, comforting in a way. Not showy, but not depressing either. Before he could let his mind spiral, a woman in her 50s walked in, her hair a vibrant, unmistakably artificial red, and her presence confident. Mr. Caldwell? She asked, offering a hand. Ethan stood. Yes, ma'am. I'm Lisa Wexler. Greg called ahead. He asked me to take very good care of you. She motioned for him to follow. Come on, let's go talk. Inside her office, a space both functional and personal, Ethan accepted a coffee and began laying out his story. He kept it mostly factual, discovered Vanessa's betrayal, wanted a divorce, and needed to protect the proceeds from the recent business sale. He skipped the part about the car. No need to complicate things with a luxury he technically didn't own. Ethan, mind if I call you that? Lisa asked mid-conversation. Not at all. Great. And I'm Lisa, she smiled. Now here's the good news, relatively speaking, of course. Greg told me you and your sisters owned the company before your marriage. That means your ownership shares and the payout from the sale qualify as separate property. Vanessa can't touch that money, but it's critical you don't mix those funds into any shared accounts with her. Does that match how you've handled it? I think so, Ethan said. But what about the house, retirement accounts, everything else? That's where it gets a bit less favorable, Lisa said honestly. Since your income's significantly higher, you'll likely owe some alimony. But we can adjust the amount to avoid tapping into your retirement savings. The upside? Your daughters are in college, so no child support obligations. I'm already covering tuition, Ethan said, nodding. That's fine. Then let's talk about the house, Lisa continued. You have two options: sell it and split the profit, or one of you can buy out the other's share based on its current appraised value. Sell it, Ethan said immediately, with zero hesitation. After what happened, I never want to set foot in that place again. And Vanessa can't afford to buy me out. So yeah, sell it. Got it. I'll prepare everything that way, Lisa replied. The petition itself is fairly straightforward. I can have it ready first thing tomorrow. We'll serve her in the afternoon and begin working on a settlement proposal next week. That fast? Ethan blinked, surprised. Ethan, she said gently, if you're at all unsure, if you think maybe counseling or even a short separation could help, I want you to know that's an option. But Ethan shook his head, cutting her off. No, I appreciate it, but less than 24 hours ago, I was excited to come home and celebrate the company's sale with Vanessa. Now I'm sitting here planning a divorce. He paused, taking a breath. It's a shock, but I know what needs to happen. Let's move forward. Lisa nodded, then added softly, if you change your mind, just call. We can pivot. Ethan thanked her, paid the retainer, and stepped out into the afternoon sun. As he walked back to the gold Mercedes, his mind briefly wandered to the smug face of the man he'd caught in his bed, the one now likely in the middle of a very bad day. That thought reminded him. He'd promised to call Vanessa. He slid into the driver's seat, pulled out his phone, and dialed. Back at her law firm, Vanessa reached for her phone when it rang. Ethan, she answered, her voice cautious. Vanessa, it's me, Ethan said, his voice calm but distant. I heard you were trying to reach me. Oh, Ethan, thank you for calling, Vanessa said quickly, relief and tension colliding in her tone. I've missed you. She hesitated. Where are you? I'm in Charlotte, Ethan replied. What about you? I'm here too, she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. When did you get back? I got in last night, Ethan answered, his tone clipped. A sharp pain twisted in Vanessa's stomach. She leaned back in her chair, suddenly short of breath. Panic bloomed in her chest. Vanessa, I'm about to hang up, Ethan said, clearly done playing games. No, please, Ethan, don't hang up, she blurted, her voice cracking. Can we meet? Just for a few minutes, please. Ethan paused. Despite everything, this was still the woman he'd built his life with, the mother of his children, his partner of more than 2 decades. For just a second, the weight of history pulled at him. All right, he said finally. The Center Cafe. 6 o'clock. The knot in Vanessa's stomach tightened even more. The Center Cafe. The place we first met. Her thoughts swirled. Why am I scared? He chose it. I have to say yes. Yes, Ethan, she said, her voice faltering. I'll be there. And in a whisper, she added, I'm sorry. I love you. Ethan didn't answer. He simply ended the call. Vanessa sat frozen, the dial tone echoing in her ears. Tears began to slip down her cheeks. Her chest tightened with regret. She arrived at the cafe early and ordered a glass of wine, hoping it would calm her nerves. Alone at the table, she spiraled through memories and shame. Her life had become something she didn't recognize. In college, she'd experimented with control, with sex, with power. Her earliest flings were with large, physically dominating men. Athletes who made her feel small, helpless, and desired. By the time she met Ethan, she'd thought she'd outgrown all that. He was strong in a different way, loving, dependable, and fiercely loyal. He made her feel safe. That should have been enough. But then came that flight back from a weekend trip to the West Coast. Ethan had stayed behind to meet with a pharmaceutical firm, and Vanessa had flown home solo. Her seatmate on the red-eye turned out to be an NFL coach, big, charming, confident. They drank, chatted, and somewhere between turbulence and exhaustion, she fell asleep with her head resting against him. When she woke, his hand was between her legs. She hadn't stopped him. Not then, not even afterward. She told herself it had been a mistake, that it didn't count. But deep down, she knew it was the beginning of a slide. Vanessa had convinced herself she was faithful, that she'd changed, that her past belonged to another version of herself. And for a while, she really had meant it, especially once the girls left for college. She and Ethan had grown closer, even stronger. He'd been thoughtful, generous, even told her she deserved a new car, one she could pick out herself. It felt like a gift, a renewal. That's when she met Derek Malone at the Mercedes dealership. He hadn't sold her a car, but he had sold her something else. Attention, temptation, danger. He read her like a script and manipulated her straight into bed. Vanessa didn't even pretend to be seduced. It wasn't about desire, it was about betrayal. About the part of her that always seemed ready to ruin what was good. She'd gotten away with affairs before, telling herself they didn't count, that the marriage was still intact. But this time, Ethan knew. He'd seen it, and she knew what that meant. "Hello, Vanessa." His voice cut into her thoughts like a blade. She looked up and saw him standing there. He looked older somehow, more worn. Not just tired, changed. It broke her. "Hi, Ethan," she said, barely able to get the words out. "Thank you for coming. I don't even know where to start. I'm so sorry." Ethan sat across from her, his face unreadable. "I need to ask you some questions." "Oh, Ethan, please, don't." Vanessa pleaded, already unraveling. "If there's any chance for us, those questions, they'll just destroy it. Please don't make me say it out loud." Ethan's voice was firm, unmoved. "Vanessa, if we don't face this, there's nothing left to save. If you can't answer honestly, I'm walking away right now." A part of her wanted to bolt. The other part, the snake inside, the part that always sabotaged, told her to stay and suffer. Maybe if Ethan could get it out, get all of it out, they could begin to rebuild. "Okay," she whispered. "Ask me anything." Ethan didn't wait. "Do you know what time I got home last night?" Vanessa blinked. She hadn't expected that. "No, not exactly." "And do you know what I saw when I walked into our bedroom?" Ethan's voice dropped, sharp and cold. "Or maybe I should say, what used to be our bedroom." Vanessa's breath hitched. "Yes, Ethan," she whispered, her voice shaking. I know what you must have seen. And I know it's probably the worst thing you've ever had to witness. I know it's all my fault. Please let me explain. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Ethan didn't blink. He just stared at her, and when he finally spoke again, his voice had lost all warmth. "Shut up, Vanessa." The word struck like a slap. His tone wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was final, cold, surgical. "Next question," he said, staring straight through her. "How many men have there been since we got married? Don't lie. If I even think you're lying, I'll leave and never come back. Understand?" The weight of his question crushed her chest like a steel beam. Her instincts screamed at her to lie, but that option had died the moment Ethan stepped into that bedroom. "3," she said, each syllable like a stone falling into a deep, dark well. "3 men, Ethan. And I regret every one of them." He held her gaze for a long time, the silence between them thick with disbelief and pain. She could see it in his eyes, what was left of the love, bleeding out in real time. Finally, he spoke. "I can see it. In your eyes. I think this marriage is over." Vanessa's mouth opened slightly, as if to protest. "And I understand," Ethan continued. "Because I deserve better than this. I deserve better than you. I'd do just about anything to fix this," Vanessa said, her voice barely a whisper. "But if you're done with me, I understand." In that moment, it felt like her entire world caved in. She had no defense left, no words that could make any difference. Deep down, she already knew what was coming. "Call your lawyer, Vanessa," Ethan said, his voice straining under the weight of both pain and finality. "You'll be served with divorce papers tomorrow." And just like that, he stood up and walked away. Vanessa remained rooted to her chair, frozen. Not even tears came at first, only a quiet, stunned emptiness. His words echoed in her mind like a cruel chorus, over and over. And then, slowly, the guilt broke through, gnawing its way into her core until finally, the dam burst. The tears came hard and fast of regret, of grief, and of knowing she destroyed something precious. Outside, Ethan walked away from the cafe where they'd first met so many years ago. He couldn't help but wonder if that would be the last time they ever had a conversation that mattered. The word closeness felt like a bitter joke now. How do you come back from this? He asked himself. He had always believed their marriage could survive anything. They'd been through job changes, raising 2 daughters, the stress of owning a business, life's usual messes. But this? Walking in on Vanessa in their bed, wrapped around another man? That wasn't something you just got over. And Derek. Of all people, it had been Derek. In their bed. That image wouldn't leave him. Vanessa's body tangled with Derek's, both of them asleep like nothing mattered. It was burned into Ethan's memory, clinging to him like smoke after a fire. No matter how hard he tried, It stayed. This is the end, he thought. It has to be. His eyes filled as he slid into the driver's seat of the gold Mercedes. He stared straight ahead, letting the tears fall, a mixture of sorrow and disbelief. Then, something Rachel had said earlier drifted back to him, her warning about the photos. If I see them, I'll never be able to forget, she had told him. And it'll be that much harder to forgive. She was right. Seeing those images had nearly destroyed him, and he wasn't even the one married to Derek. Ethan picked up his phone and dialed. Hello. Rachel answered, her voice low, raspy. Rachel, it's Ethan. Just checking in. Wanted to see how you were doing. And also, what you'd like me to do with the car. Thanks for calling, she said, trying to sound composed, though fatigue still clung to her words. I'm surviving. You can hang onto the car. Derek won't be needing it anytime soon. Trouble? Ethan asked, the question casual, but the weight behind it clear. Don't tell me you shot him. No, Rachel said with dry amusement. But he might have preferred that. He got arrested yesterday for breaking into our house. Apparently, he even took a swing at one of the officers. They tasered him. Ethan blinked. Seriously. Dead serious, she said. And it gets worse. Something happened in holding. He won't talk about it, but I think another inmate roughed him up. He had to call his brother to bail him out. The whole family knows now. Wow, Ethan muttered. I can't say I feel bad for him, but I do feel for you. You did the right thing this morning. Not looking at those pictures? That probably saved you a lot of extra pain. Yeah, Rachel sighed. He came home a couple of hours ago. Crying. Begging to stay. I don't even know what to do anymore. I've got 2 young kids. It's a mess. I'm sorry, Ethan said genuinely. You don't deserve this. His brother, he's a lawyer, told me I should push for a prenup if we ever try to make things work again. He's helping me take over the finances too. Derek's on a very short leash. You're doing what you need to do, Ethan said. I admire that. And whenever you're ready to get the car back, just let me know. No rush. Thanks, Ethan, she said softly. They hung up. Ethan sat for a moment, emotions tumbling over each other, relief, sadness, and maybe, in some small way, justice. Maybe Derek had finally been shaken awake. Arrested. Tasered. Possibly assaulted. Humiliated. If that didn't make him rethink his life, nothing would. Ethan hoped, for Rachel's sake, and her kids, that the man had learned something. Back at the motel, Ethan sank onto the bed, exhausted but restless. One more call. There was still one thing left to do before he could even try to sleep. He pulled out his phone again and dialed. Hi, Daddy. Lily answered, her voice sweet but unsure. Everything okay? Hey, Janie, Ethan said, doing his best to sound upbeat. Just wanted to see if you and Joan were free for brunch tomorrow. Maybe around 11? The bistro on 4th Street. The one we used to go to. That sounds great, she said, her voice warming. Let me check with Joan. There was a pause. Then Lily came back on the line. She's good with it. We'll see you tomorrow at 11. Perfect, Ethan replied. Can't wait. Love you both. He hung up, quietly hoping they wouldn't mention anything to Vanessa. But he knew he couldn't control that. He'd have to let them speak their truth, whatever that meant. Meanwhile, across town, Vanessa still hadn't stopped crying. She had obliterated everything. Her marriage, her home, her family. The ripple effects were already starting. She knew it wouldn't be long before her daughters found out. Her parents, her friends, and Ethan. Poor Ethan. He didn't deserve to see what he had seen. That image must have destroyed something inside him. She was sure of it. Vanessa clutched her sides as the sobs took over again. A waitress approached and gently asked if she needed to use the restroom. Vanessa shook her head. She paid the bill with shaking hands and stumbled out of the cafe, walking the lonely path back to what was no longer her home. Inside, she found a dusty bottle of gin tucked in the back of the kitchen cabinet. She poured a glass, not to forget, just to mute the pain. She drank it slowly, her mind drifting toward the impossible, a miracle that would somehow bring Ethan back. The next morning, Ethan was already at the bistro when Lily and Joan arrived. He had reviewed and signed off on the finalized divorce petition that morning, then driven a couple hours out of Charlotte just to clear his head and practice what he wanted to say. But first, like always, there were hugs, smiles, kisses on the cheek. How's school? He asked, pulling out their chairs. How's work? They smiled, but the air was different. They knew something was coming. They ordered their meals, made small talk through bites, and picked at the leftovers until only empty plates and tense silence remained. That's when the real conversation finally began. Dad, we know something's wrong, Joan said gently, her eyes locked on his. You look pale. Like, actually sick. You're not about to tell us you have cancer or something, are you? And where's Mom? Ethan took a deep breath, steadying himself. Girls. Yes, there's bad news. Really bad, he said carefully. But it's not medical. Nobody's dying. Before he could continue, Lily jumped in, trying to lighten the mood. Wait, did she run off with one of the lawyers from her firm? Like, some hot young guy with abs that Joni or I should be chasing. Both girls burst into laughter, half shocked by their own boldness. But when they looked back at their father, the smile vanished from their faces. He wasn't laughing. No, Ethan said softly. It's not that. Joan's expression collapsed. Her voice cracked. No, it's not. She couldn't finish the thought. Saying it out loud made it real. Girls, I need you to listen closely, Ethan said, keeping his tone calm but clear. Yes, your mother cheated on me. But I need you to understand, she didn't cheat on you. Joan's lip trembled. That's not true, Dad, she said, her voice breaking. If her choices are tearing our family apart, then yeah, she cheated on us too. Ethan didn't argue. He simply nodded, tears silently rolling down his cheeks. The girls stood up and wrapped their arms around him, clinging tightly to each other and to the only stable thing they had left. Let's get out of here, Lily said, voice thick with emotion. There's a park 2 blocks over. We'll have more privacy there. People had begun to glance over at their table, so Ethan quickly paid the check, and they headed out. One daughter on each side. Ethan walked between them in silence, their steps slow and heavy with emotion. At the park, they found a bench tucked beneath a cluster of trees. They sat close, still processing. Tell us, Dad, Lily said after a minute. We deserve the truth. How bad is it? Joan nodded beside her. We're adults now, remember? We can handle this. Ethan took another breath, one that rattled in his chest. On the way here, I tried to figure out how to say this. But you're right. You're both old enough. So here it is. Your mom didn't just cheat once. I found her in our bed with another man. And she admitted there were others before him. The silence that followed was crushing. I'm still trying to process it myself, he added. But I know one thing for sure. We're not coming back from this. I've already hired a divorce lawyer. She'll be served today. Tears welled up again, and this time, none of them held back. They cried together. Ethan for the love he'd lost, the girls for the family that was fracturing around them. After a long silence, Ethan cleared his throat. Girls, listen to me, he said gently. No matter how bad this gets, your job now is to focus on yourselves. On school. There's enough money set aside for both of you to finish your senior year at Duke. And if either of you want to go to grad school, I'll make that happen too. They looked at him, surprised by the sudden shift. But there's a catch, he said, his tone growing serious. A catch. Joan blinked. What kind of catch? I'm happy to pay for your education, Ethan said. But I expect you to earn it. Get your heads back in the game. Keep your grades up, and don't let this destroy your momentum. He looked at both of them, eyes glistening. Yes, I know what your mother did was devastating. But you told me yourselves, you're adults now. And that means stepping up, even when life punches you in the gut. Joan and Lily looked at each other, both crying again. But this time, they stood up and wrapped their arms around him once more. Yes, Joan said through her tears. You're the best, Dad. And we promise, we won't let you down. Lily was quieter, but her eyes were serious. She's right, Dad. We won't let you down. But, what about you? What are you going to do? Ethan paused, then offered a tired smile. You know, you can think a lot during a tower drive. That got a faint chuckle from them both. First, he said, I want you to know, I'm not surprised by your strength. I've always believed in you. But yeah, what your mom did hit me hard. Really hard. And I had to make a choice. Crawl into a hole, feel sorry for myself, maybe try to forgive her, or figure out what my next chapter looks like. He looked out at the trees, then back at them. I've spent my whole adult life taking care of everyone else, he said, voice thick. Started with your grandparents' business. Then I looked after my sisters, then your mom, and of course, you too. And I don't regret it. I'd do it all again. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The company sold, so that chapter's closed. Vanessa made her choice. And you too. Well, I'll always be here to help you launch your lives. He smiled, just barely. 2 home runs out of 3 isn't so bad, right? Considering the women in my life. The girls exchanged a confused glance, but they were smiling now, through the sadness. That leaves one person, Ethan continued. Me. His eyes brightened for the first time all day. I'm not looking at this as the worst thing to ever happen to me anymore. I'm calling it what it is, a fresh start. A new life. A life that's finally about me. Okay, Dad, really? Joan said, raising an eyebrow. You sound like a self-help audiobook. He laughed softly. I'm serious. No more dragging my feet through life. I want to run marathons, climb mountains, swim across the Atlantic, hell, maybe even hike through the Alps or go on a safari. He looked at both girls, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. And maybe, just maybe, I'll meet someone out there doing the same thing. Someone who wants to build a life, no lies, no secrets. Wow, Joan breathed. Dad, that's amazing. Both girls stared at him in disbelief. This man, this was their father? This hopeful, newly reborn version of him? Did you seriously come up with all this just during the drive here? Lily asked, blinking. Ethan chuckled, a bit sheepish. Well, partially. I also didn't sleep much. A lot of stuff spinning around in my head. He leaned in, more serious now. I could have started drinking. Could have sulked, raged, gotten bitter. But I'm choosing something else. I'm going to take this mess and turn it into something better. They hugged him again, tight and warm and full of love. Then, slowly, they said their goodbyes and Ethan headed back toward Charlotte, the gold Mercedes humming beneath him. Not long after Ethan left, the girls exchanged a glance. Lily pulled out her phone. Joan nodded and put hers on speaker. They dialed. Hello, came Vanessa's voice, tired, worn, and distant. Mom, Joan said. It's Joan. And Lily's here too. We just had breakfast with Dad, Joan said softly, her voice tight with emotion. He told us everything. There was a pause on the other end of the line, then Vanessa's voice came through, sharp and tense. What? What do you mean everything? What did he say? Joan took a breath and continued carefully. He said the word divorce, Mom. And the reason is your betrayal. He gave us more detail than we wanted, but that's the bottom line. Is it true? There was silence. A beat. Then a shaky, broken sigh. Oh, girls. Vanessa's voice cracked. This is hard. Your father and I, we've been married a long time. And yes, I made a terrible mistake. More than one, really. But I know we can fix it. I just need to give your father some time. Mom, Joan interrupted gently but firmly. Dad didn't say anything about fixing it. He talked about cheating. He talked about moving on. There was hesitation again. Well, technically, yes, he's right, Vanessa said carefully. But that doesn't mean all hope is lost. Marriages survive worse. No, Lily cut in, her voice sharp and frustrated. Mom, you're in denial. He already met with a lawyer. He told us himself, there's no going back. Joan's tone softened again. We don't want to pick sides, but you need to accept what's real. Pretending won't change anything. There was another long pause. Then Vanessa's voice came again, quiet, stripped of its usual control. I know, she whispered. I know. I ruined everything. I destroyed my marriage. And honestly, I think your father hates me. He should. I've done unforgivable things. He told me to get a lawyer, and he was right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Joan's voice carried a gentle compassion. We know this is hard, Mom. And we're not angry at you. But we're okay. Dad's doing everything he can to protect us. Now you need to take care of yourself. Yeah, Lily added, her tone more pragmatic. Hiring a lawyer is the right move. And if you really need us, we can come to Charlotte. Thank you, girls, Vanessa replied, her voice thick with tears. That's sweet of you, but I'll be all right. I just need some time to face what I've done. They ended the call quietly. Joan stared at her phone for a long moment, then looked at Lily with a bitter smile. You know what's weird? She said softly. We're more worried about Mom, who caused all this, than we are about Dad. They talked a bit longer, weighing what to do, before deciding not to go home. Their parents would have to deal with this themselves. Meanwhile, in Charlotte, Vanessa sat alone in her kitchen, nursing a slow, throbbing hangover from the gin she'd downed the night before. The conversation with her daughters had only made things worse. Her chest felt hollow. She knew she needed to get up, get dressed, do something. You can't drink yourself out of this, she told herself. But even as she considered walking to the store for more gin, the doorbell rang. She opened the door to find a young woman on the porch, casually chewing gum. Can I help you? Vanessa asked, confused. Yes, ma'am. The The woman said, snapping her gum. Are you Vanessa Caldwell? Wife of Ethan Caldwell. Vanessa narrowed her eyes. Yes, why? You've been served. The woman handed over a folder of legal papers and raised her phone to snap a picture for proof. What? Wait, what is this? Vanessa asked, already knowing the answer. But the woman had turned and was heading back to her car, unfazed. Shaking, Vanessa walked back inside and collapsed at the kitchen table. Her fingers trembled as she opened the folder. And there it was, the title printed clearly at the top of the first page. Petition for divorce. Ethan's final words echoed in her head. Get a lawyer. She sat in silence, surrounded by fading photos and memories of a life she'd taken for granted. She knew those days were gone. There was no saving it now. She had burned everything to the ground. 6 years later, Vanessa sat in a grand ballroom, watching Lily spin around the dance floor with her new husband. Everything looked beautiful, elegant. Lily beamed, radiant in white. Vanessa smiled, but her heart ached. Back when the girls were teenagers, life had felt overwhelming. School pickups, college visits. Ethan always buried in work, and herself bored with paperwork and legal briefs. At the time, she thought that was chaos. Now she longed for those days. She was still working at the same law firm, still drowning in stacks of client files she used to dream of escaping. Nothing had changed, except everything. Vanessa, here's your wine, said Martin, her date. He handed her the glass with a warm smile. She looked up at him. He was kind. Middle-aged, soft around the middle, balding. Sweet. He'd escorted her to the wedding, made polite conversation, kept her company. Thanks, Martin, Vanessa said, her voice gentle. You're very kind. He smiled. The bride looked stunning, just like her mother. Vanessa chuckled quietly. That's sweet of you. He was the kind of man she could possibly marry, if he were interested. But he wasn't. She could see it in his eyes. Her gaze drifted across the room. Ethan. He stood near the bar, laughing with Joan and her boyfriend. Tanned, lean, and impossibly fit, he looked like he'd stepped out of a travel magazine. She had heard he'd just returned from a mountaineering trip in Nepal. His girlfriend stood beside him, equally toned, equally radiant, holding his hand with the easy confidence of someone who belonged. Vanessa's chest tightened. Joan had told her they'd met on another expedition in South America. They'd been traveling together ever since, climbing, sailing, living the kind of life Vanessa had once scoffed at and now quietly envied. Vanessa? Martin said, gently touching her arm. She looked over, startled. I think we should leave, he said kindly but firmly. You've done your part as mother of the bride. Sitting here, watching him, it's not helping you. And it's not helping whatever this is between us. She paused. He wasn't wrong. You're right, Martin. You're sweet. Let me say goodbye to the girls, and then we'll head out. She crossed the ballroom to Lily and Joan, gave them each a long hug, and kissed the newlyweds with as much grace as she could manage. Then, deliberately, she avoided even glancing in Ethan's direction. But Ethan noticed. He saw her leave, and despite everything, he felt a dull pang. Regret, perhaps, or just the echo of what once was. As he watched her go, Joan nudged his arm. Sorry, Dad, what did you say? Ethan blinked. What? You said something about that ugly gold Mercedes, Joan said with a smirk. The one you showed up in when we had brunch at Duke? Whatever happened to that car? Ethan laughed, shaking his head. Ah, the gold Mercedes. That thing. Yeah, that's a story. Let's just say I borrowed it from a friend. Gave it back not long after. Didn't like it? She asked. Didn't trust it, Ethan said, eyes twinkling. That car brought more trouble than it was worth. I think she sold it. Honestly, that thing was cursed. Joan laughed, and Ethan turned his attention back to his girlfriend. They were already planning their next trip. Somewhere high, somewhere wild, somewhere new. And the gold Mercedes, and everything it symbolized, was now firmly in the rearview mirror.